LS84 TV, Canal 11, República Argentina.
Hey, I got news for you. I killed 33 times. You're only gonna kill me once. Gacy outsmarted him again.
Tonight say the justices could have kept Gacy alive, brushed their motions aside without reading them. During a Chicago news conference late this afternoon, Gacy's lawyers say that the 7th U.S. Court of Appeals addressed a point not included in their argument, proving that the justices couldn't have read it. The notorious serial killer was executed early today at Stateville Prison in Joliet. Channel 3's John Paul was there when Gacy died.
Serial killer John Gacy's appeals to put off his date with death faded too.
John Wayne Gacy was pronounced dead at 12:58 a.m.
The 52-year-old Chicago man who killed 33 young men and boys and buried them in his crawl space had spent 14 years on death row. His victims' families wanted more pain.
I'm glad it's over. I just wish that there could have been more suffering, so to speak. The punishment doesn't fit the crime.
And I'm just glad that finally a little justice was done in this matter.
Gacy was the first Illinois prisoner executed against his will in more than 3 decades. Witnesses say his final words were that his death amounted to murder by the state and that it would not bring back anyone. Despite problems with one of the lethal injection tubes, witnesses say Gacy took a deep breath and died a peaceful death. Dave Hockmeister arrested Gacy in 1978.
Do you see a finality here?
Yeah, I think that's it. To tell you the truth, I don't know. I was real angry with the whole situation, and I think this is just the conclusion.
He got a much easier death than any of his victims. In my opinion, he got an easier death than he deserved.
Kill that clown! Kill that clown! Kill that clown!
Death penalty demonstrators at the prison who favored the execution far outnumbered the candle-carrying death penalty opponents.
No, he did horrible things. The things he did were truly evil, but that does not give us the right to take his life.
Gacy's long-awaited execution here in Joliet is not expected to trigger a wave of other executions in Illinois. Only 4 condemned inmates have been on death row longer than Gacy, and their cases are tangled in a web of legal appeals. 150 others are waiting in line behind him. John Paul, Channel 3 News at Stateville Prison in Joliet.
Many family members were angry that they were not allowed to actually witness the execution. My colleague Chuck Gowdy spent the night covering Gacy's execution that was scheduled actually for 1 minute after midnight, but occurred much later than that, about an hour later than that, because of at least one serious delay.
John Wayne Gacy was pronounced dead at 12:58 a.m.
That statement early this morning was more than 15 years in the making. 15 years after a graveyard of torture victims was found under his house, John Gacy paid the price. Gacy was executed for 33 sex-related murders, executed in this room at Stateville Prison, the former home of the old electric chair. His death by lethal injection took 18 minutes, 3 or 4 times longer than it should have, because of a major snafu, a blockage in an intravenous line that was to deliver the chemical to stop Gacy's breathing, the second of 3 chemicals.
During the second chemical, there was some problem with that chemical gelling in the line. We're not real clear whether it was the blood clotting with the needle or whether the chemical itself was gelling.
42 official and media witnesses watched the execution and watched as the curtain was closed during the foul-up.
He did not make eye contact with any of us. He looked up at the ceiling, said a few words to the director and the warden. One of the things I did notice was there was a complete change in the color of his face, and obviously he had a stoppage of the heart.
There were all these sort of shadowy things going on, and it was very creepy, but it wasn't like you saw anything bad happen.
Authorities say Gacy made a final statement that taking his life would not compensate for the loss of others, and that this was the state murdering him. 23 relatives of Gacy victims were not among the witnesses. They were put in a meeting room at the prison, found out Gacy was dead from TV news coverage, and served punch and cookies.
We weren't at all notified what was going on throughout the whole episode, and we were all a little bit distraught about that.
The cause of death to be listed on John Wayne Gacy's death certificate, homicide. Ironically, the same cause of death listed on the death certificates of his 33 victims. Albeit in Gacy's case, it was at the hands of the state. At Stateville Prison in Joliet, Chuck Gowdy, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Now, as Chuck mentioned, relatives of the victims flocked here for the execution, for the final chapter of their suffering, if you will. And following the execution, they reflected on all the years and all the pain.
I just don't feel that it solved a whole lot, seeing someone, hearing about someone's death. But it was the sentence that came down. And I feel we need to be more consistent with our laws if we expect to ever have a peaceful society.
My son should be remembered, and all those that have not been mentioned should be mentioned. And Michael Marino should be mentioned, and all those that have never been mentioned should be mentioned. Thank you, God.
I feel justice has been served. Just like Tim said, I'm glad it's over. It was a long, drawn-out, way overdue process that has to be shortened.
Were you told about what his last statement was? What was your opinion about that?
We were told nothing. We were really told very little.
His last statement was that he felt he was innocent, he was a victim of all this?
You know, that's something he's been saying for 15 years. That's basically what I expected him to say.
In Rockford, Illinois today, jury selection begins for a mass murder trial that will actually be conducted in Chicago. It's been more than a year since the murders were discovered, but Chris Kelly reports emotion in the case remains high.
You might be witnessing one of the most horrible crimes, perhaps, in a century.
It was a grisly scene. Day after day, the bodies of boys and young men being taken out of the home of John Wayne Gacy. 29 decomposed corpses were found under the house and surrounding grounds. 4 other bodies were discovered in a river several miles away. In all, Gacy is charged with 33 murders over a 7-year period. More than a year later, 11 victims remain unidentified. Authorities claim the 37-year-old building contractor used job offers and sometimes strong-arm methods to bring his young male victims to his home for intended homosexual activities. Most were killed, a few escaped.
Definitely threatened me with that he had guns in the house, and that if he had to, if I went to the police or told anyone about his advances upon me, that I would be endangered with that, and that he wanted me to realize how easy it would have been for him to kill me right then and there.
Police searched the home for several months looking for other victims. The house was so badly dismantled that it had to be torn down. Gacy has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. During 3 of his pretrial court appearances, he collapsed and was hospitalized for apparent heart problems. But doctors have been unable to find any health problems serious enough to prevent him from standing trial. Among those the defense would like to call as potential witnesses is Rosalind Carter, who posed with Gacy for this 1976 photograph. At the time, Gacy was a Democratic volunteer campaign worker. Because of the enormous publicity generated by the case, the jury will be selected in Rockford, 90 miles away from Chicago. The city was picked because a study showed that of 5 potential sites, people here had been subjected to the least number of news accounts of the case.
I think Rockford is a good common sense community. People don't have a tendency to run in a pack in Rockford. I think most of the people here are independent enough to form their own opinions. And I think that probably a sense of fairness pervades that kind of thinking.
The selection of the jury here in this Rockford courtroom and the subsequent trial itself in Chicago represent an unprecedented legal procedure in Illinois. The hope is that this, along with sequestering the jury, will assure Gacy a fair trial. Chris Kelly, CBS News, Rockford, Illinois.
Prison authorities in Illinois are preparing to execute one of America's most notorious serial killers. John Wayne Gacy is scheduled to die by lethal injection early Tuesday morning after a legal battle that has gone on for years. More now from Frank Courier.
It was 1978 when the world first saw the horrifying images of body bags being pulled from John Wayne Gacy's house near Chicago, and of Gacy, later convicted in the torture murders of 33 young men and boys and condemned to die.
Nothing is going to stop this execution from happening. It's gotta happen.
After 14 years on death row in an Illinois prison, fighting to overturn his sentence, Gacy's time is running out. His lawyers are scrambling to block Tuesday's scheduled execution.
Mr. Gacy is, unfortunately, the person that everybody holds up to support the idea that capital punishment is right and that it works and that it's just.
But prosecutors say he's exhausted his options.
I don't want to see any last-minute delays. The case has been pending for 14 years. His lawyers had an obligation sometime in the last 14 years to bring up whatever they're trying to bring up today.
Most Chicagoans agree and are fed up with paying millions of tax dollars to keep a confessed serial killer alive.
We've wasted enough money on him already.
He just doesn't have a purpose on this planet.
Not surprisingly, even activists admit that Gacy may be the perfect argument for capital punishment, but they want to keep him alive, saying that any execution sends out the wrong message.
The unavoidable truth is that the death penalty makes premeditated killers of us all. We become the very thing that we condemn.
Still, for the victims' families, it'll be justice served when, barring any last-minute reprieve, Gacy dies by lethal injection in a small execution chamber at Stateville Penitentiary.
I'm not only the victim here. I may be the 34th victim, but there are other victims to this crime, and that is the family. Because if I know that I didn't commit the crime, then I have been given the injustice, and so has the families. And nobody gives a damn about the families.
As though he cares, which clearly he does not. And when the families insist that John Gacy pay for his crimes with his life, his real feelings come out.
That one mother that gets on television all the time who thinks I should be given 33 injections, I think she ought to take 33 Valiums and go lay down. She goes on Geraldo show and all these other shows talking about, I think it's Maori, I think is the name. Her Marine son. Her Marine son, if her Marine son was so great, what the hell did he run away from home 12 times?
Not enough for him to be murdered.
I know that.